Welcome to the Art of Coaching podcast, a show aimed at getting to the core of what it takes to change attitudes, behaviors, and outcomes in the weight room, boardroom, classroom, and everywhere in between. I'm your host, Brett Bartholomew. I'm a performance coach, keynote speaker, and the author of the book, Conscious Coaching. But most importantly, I'm a lifelong student interested in all aspects of human behavior and communication. I want to thank you for joining me, and now let's dive into today's episode. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back. I appreciate you taking time for another solo sit down with me. And today we're going to talk on a subject that impacts pretty much everybody at some point in their life or another, right? Is hiring, recruiting, trying to figure out how do I get the right people? How do I find the right people to scale what I'm doing, to improve my staff, to make my life easier, whatever those things are. Now, in the context of today's episode, specifically, we're going to talk about sticking points that happen when trying to find or recruit viable candidates, and a tool. This is going to kind of be the bell cow of the episode, a tool that we now use at Art of Coaching to help us navigate fit, because there have been a lot of mistakes that we've learned from, and there was a lot of information that we were trying to sort through when we were trying to strengthen our hiring process. Some of it didn't make sense for us. Maybe it makes sense for you, but ultimately we really whittled things down to a process that has helped us, and not even just in the sense of hiring, because we're still a small company, but more filtering, because it's one thing to just get more people. It's not hard to actually hire. It is hard to find fit. So that is really what we're going to do. And what we're going to talk about is, we want to break our process down for you piece by piece so you can steal it and adapt it for your own purposes. This is also something we're going to be expanding upon on an upcoming live event that we're doing that you can learn more about by going to artofcoaching.com/brand. That's BRAND. I know some people don't like the word brand. Don't know what to tell you, right? Like, if you want to make an impact, or if you have a reputation, you have a brand. It's an indelible mark. Yes, your reputation, even in your neighborhood or amongst friends, that is part of your brand. So I understand that the media out there influences things, and oh God, even the term influencer and all these things, but get past the words. You have a brand. Your brand is an extension of your reputation. And again, artofcoaching.com/brand. So if you're somebody who generally asks themselves some version of the following, no, I really want to make an impact, but who will even care about what I have to talk about? How will I find people to help me scale it and really build some of the services? And how do I juggle this with everything that I have to manage already? Definitely go to artofcoaching.com/brand. It's a 2-day thing. We're going to host a dinner at my house. We keep all of these things very, very, very small so that they can be extremely tactical and detailed. And we're not just speaking to a room of several hundred people about vagaries. So if you like those kinds of things and you like, just more in-depth communication and tactics, and you want to branch out and build something that lasts, check that out. Do not miss it whatsoever. Another thing too, all of our workshops can always be found at artofcoaching.com. Pretty straightforward, one-to-one mentoring, group mentoring, all that stuff is there. So just spend a couple moments on the site. You can find those things. Part of that is me just trying to get something off my chest, because oftentimes we'll get people on social media that'll say, hey, I went to your site, where's this? And it's like, if you want live events, just click on live events. If you want resources, go to resources. So take some time and lock into that. Lastly, I want to thank Chad Nelson at Yeti. Guys, Art of Coaching is a family-owned small business. And despite the fact that we've worked with a wide variety of larger organizations, sports teams, athletes, government agencies, and what have you, we've been overlooked plenty in our day, just like many of you. There's always moments in time where it feels like no matter what you accomplish, that you're still kind of a nobody, right? At least sometimes in your own eyes, if not other people's, but it can feel like that. And certain companies have been great partners and supporters of ours, and we're super thankful for that. But like many of you can relate to, breaking through the noise is a hard and long road. Even when you've done things at a multinational level, you can still be left feeling like an underdog. But there was a conversation I had last week with Yeti that really reinvigorated me on many fronts, because it lets you know that there are juggernaut organizations out there like them who still root for people like us at Art of Coaching, and many of you listening who are trying to do things different. So be on the lookout for for more news on what we may do with Team Yeti in the future. For now, just know that if you do come to the workshop that I mentioned earlier, or you join our coalition, which you can find at artofcoaching.com/coalition, you should not be surprised to see them well represented. You should also not be surprised to see some of their stuff get into your hands. Okay. Now, to the meat of this. Every company has a slightly different hiring process, and I don't want to waste a lot of time here. So I'm not going to talk about different things I've experienced when I went through interviews and what have you. That could be a whole episode on its own. I remember one organization when I was just pretty much out of grad school and really my first job saying, well, you've moved around a lot. And I'm like, well, yeah, I went to undergrad. Then I did an internship. Then I went to grad school. Then I got a full-time job. Then I got a promotion. These things required moves. I didn't move around because I'd just been here a year, there a year, and what have you. I've also had an interview experience where somebody was literally asking me some wild question, got lost in the middle of the question, and was like, hang tight. Let me grab this book I've been reading. It will help remind me. And then proceeds to whiteboard something out. And it was just one of these ridiculous questions that made no sense. He had to read it from a book. And I remember later on when I asked, for feedback on how the interview went, it was like, well, you didn't seem to understand what I was talking about. And I was like, dude, you had to get a reference book for what you were talking about. But we've all had our own idiosyncrasies, either on one end or the other of it. And, one common theme across the board, no matter the industry or the size of the organization, is that listen, interviews carry a lot of the weight, and many companies even conduct more than one interview for every open position. It's pretty standard practice, but a lot of these things don't work. When somebody walks into your office or virtually or what have you as a potential new hire, you definitely want to make sure you make the best unbiased decision for your company, but we're humans and we can't just be unbiased because we want to be. We've hired friends, we've done this. Other companies have their versions of nepotism. It's a reality, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. And sometimes these processes can linger so long that, you end up with a candidate who didn't really fit perfectly, but you need to keep the wheels in motion. And, it can feel like an exhausting process. I mean, some research suggests that 81% of new hires fail. 81%. And how often does that happen? Because they've been placed in the wrong role, or they're at the wrong company. They didn't know what they wanted, or they weren't effectively vetted in the first place. So that's what we're going to focus on specifically, is vetting people. Vetting them, because you can get recommendations, you can do this, but you don't always know if it's going to be a fit. So there's so much to cover on this. I can talk. I'm going to give one example from when, I was mainly just in strength and conditioning, and then I'll give an example of what we're doing now, and then I'll talk to you about the tool. So one thing that we had done is, in strength and conditioning, the hiring process is always a gong show, and everybody wants to tell you about their certifications and all this, and their resume and their references. Everybody can do those things. But here's the thing. We wanted something that was going to attract people that kind of went the extra mile. They were go-getters, so to speak, right? And not just go-getters in terms of, what they had done in their career and what they had pursued, but mainly because they paid attention to the details. And this is why you want to have what are called tripwires in what you do from a vetting process. So, quick story with this is there was a brilliant reason why Van Halen asked for a bowl of M&Ms with all the brown candies removed for every show. And if you haven't heard of this, it's pretty cool. Rock band Van Halen, legendary rock band, rest in peace to Eddie Van Halen, had one of the most oddly specific requests whenever they had this runner for their show. And it was a bowl of M&M candies with all the brown ones removed. Now, for years, it was always kind of seen as a folly, and, megalomaniacs. It was just like, what are you doing? Like, why are you making this ridiculous demand of these things? But it was actually a pretty shrewd business move if you know the story. They talk about this, this clause was buried deep in this contract. I mean, it was buried really, really deep in the contract. And lead singer David Lee Roth explained in an interview in 2012, the bowl of M&Ms was actually an indicator of whether the concert promoter had actually read the band's complicated contract, because If they had, it gave them a little bit more insight as to whether they could trust the setup. They had a really complex setup in terms of pyrotechnics and everything like that, way more complex than the average band. And this idea, to give you an example, Van Halen was the first to take 850 what are called par lamp lights, these huge lights across the country. It was a huge production if you went to see them. And a lot of these venues were too outdated or inadequately prepared to set up their stage. And so we had said, if I come backstage, and having been one of the architects of, the lighting and the staging design, and I saw M&Ms on the catering table, the brown ones, then you could almost guarantee the promoter hadn't even read the contract writer, and we'd have to do a line check. It was a tripwire. He's like, we have to check the entire stage, because if they couldn't remember this little thing, that's really worrisome. And I've experienced this, just to give you, when we go do our apprenticeship communication workshops, there are plenty of times we try to be very clear. We're like, hey, here's a 1-page PDF, very clean, double spaced, just some simple bullets. We need to make sure there's Wi-Fi, is there audio, video, all these basic things. We also have a redundancy on that where if you host our apprenticeship, you generally are going to meet with my wife or a member of my team, and they're going to just go through operations and say, hey, what questions do you have? What promotional materials do you need? Once again, can you give us an idea of this space and what have you? And there are still times, guys, where we go and there's been situations where there is no Wi-Fi or, whoops, we forgot, the snacks that they were on the hook for, or, there's some other issue, or, oh no, sorry, we know that you asked for a whiteboard. Whoops, sorry about that. Oh, we were supposed to pick up the chairs. We lay these things out for people. And it's also happened when I've just gone to speak. I remember one situation, organization in a foreign country had me out, and I got there. I mean, I was speaking to nearly 1,000 people, and they were like, do you have a projector? And I'm like, a projector for, 1,000 people? No, like I don't have a projector. I have every hookup imaginable. I have everything in case just about anything else went wrong. But, I would imagine that this organization would. And so they literally had to go get somebody to get a projector. And it left me wondering, like, what are the other speakers going to do? There were 3 other people. Were they all planning on me bringing a projector? And so the point is goofy stuff happens all the time. That's why you got to vet it. So even when I was just doing strength and conditioning, one thing I would have people do is we'd say, hey, if you're interested, submit, yes, your classic stuff, your resume, your references, all that, that's fine. But in that same email, and we'd make it very clear, sometimes it would be red print. We wouldn't try to sneak it in there. We'd say in that same email, in one email, we also need 4 video links. And the video links, because we needed to see that person's personality, because people can look good on paper all they want. We need to see a video of you coaching a movement in the weight room. It can be any movement you want. We need to see a video of you coaching somebody through or a situation like in movement. So speed, agility, change of direction, decel, plyometrics, what have you. We need to see something on the court or the field. And it could literally just be a demonstration. Then we need to see a video of you. It's just 2 minutes of basic improv. You can do whatever you want. You can tell stories. You can tell us about your background. You could make a joke. We had one guy, oh my God, it was phenomenal. He did a great job just showing his sense of humor and what have you, literally. And then there were a couple other things. So what we could guarantee is if we just asked for a resume and, them to fill out an application, cool, you'd get like 100 candidates. And I'm just giving you a general number, right? If we then said these things all had to be in one email, well, the majority of them didn't do that, or they didn't include everything in there. Most people would include something about them in the weight room, but they'd forget something on the field. Or if they did the field and the weight room, they'd be like, well, I don't understand what you mean with the 2 minute, improv. And we would be like, hey, it's exactly what we said. It can literally be a video about anything. And we gave some examples and what have you. And then we would have some people that would be like, well, I don't know how to send a video link. And you see all these tripwires. If I have to teach a candidate how to just upload a video to Vimeo or YouTube and make it private, we had one person that's like, well, I'm not on YouTube. You don't have to be. If you have a Gmail account, you can upload a video and make it private. Nobody will ever see it except the person with the link and the passcode. So these were things that saved us a lot of time and trouble because guys, but as a strength coach, and I'm not to downplay this, right? Like yes, you should have an understanding in physiology and biomechanics or what have you, but I can teach you how to run a weight room. I can teach you how to do plyometrics, multi-directional mechanics, all this. What I can't teach is accountability and attention to detail and you just being resourceful. I can't. So, that was a huge time saver for us of just who has attention to detail. And it was kind of sad because, again, you might have 100 people that otherwise would have normally applied, and then maybe 3 even made it through with the instructions. So, when we started Art of Coaching, and we do so much more now, right? Everything that we do is based around communication. And if that doesn't make sense to you or you're new here, essentially, we took the lessons we learned from coaching, which a lot of that is interpersonal. And we said, hey, when you're trying to build buy-in and you're trying to connect with people, there's a lot of messy things that can happen, right? There's people with complex personalities. There's sometimes where you're in, just a situation where time is tight or somebody maybe had a bad interaction with somebody in the past. We all know what it's like when communication gets difficult with somebody. So we really have, 2 core elements of our business. We help organizations or coaches, and coaches is synonymous with leaders in our context, who are trying to learn how to build buy-in, become more effective communicators, lead their teams more efficiently, all those kinds of things. So like leadership and buy-in is one side of that. The other side of what we do is some stuff with marketing and helping companies build brands and helping them understand and coaches figure out, hey, you want to help people? Great. We'll help you get really clear on that. And then I guess really a third part, we just don't talk about it much publicly, is we work with organizations sometimes on retainer who, they're trying to almost kind of have a pseudo communications director on staff or on retainer, which might sound weird to some of you, but it's, when you consider that there's companies like Peloton that keep a litany of lawyers on retainer in case something happens. Well, there are companies out there that will also have communications managers, communications directors that say, hey, whether it's an advertisement or whether it's a staff email or whether it's how we deal with conflict, we need help dealing with the interpersonal sides of our company. And a lot of this is just people in the C-suite, a lot of times not being on the same page, or staff and other people not being on the same page. So we kind of go in and do what we call the AOC SWAT team, where, we work with those organizations to clean that up. So anyway, we're growing, we're scaling, what have you. And we've made some misfires, really good people, but just weren't a fit. So one thing that we started doing, and I think many of you have taken this if you followed us for a while, is we created a quiz and basic, right? It's artofcoaching.com/what drives you. And it could be perceived by some as a personality assessment. It's not. Drives and personality are a bit different. Again, that's context for another episode. Otherwise, I'll black out. But the idea here is that we want a general understanding of what drives somebody. Now, we've talked about this ad nauseum. When you take this quiz, nothing is static. We recommend people take it 3 to 4 times in different mood states because our emotions are going to change and our answers are going to change and we self-monitor and what have you. But the bottom line is if you applied for a job at Art of Coaching today, you would literally have to first go to artofcoaching.com/join our team. And, periodically we update some things there. There are some stuff on that page that we're not currently hiring for, but we always stockpile resumes for because we may hire for that in the future. But they'll fill out that form and then we'll say, hey, thank you. We need you to take this drives quiz. And then there's also something that we learned about, it's not enough to know about their personality. It's not enough to know about their background. What was huge for us is figuring out what kind of workplace environment do they want? And guys, think about this. This is crazy. There are some organizations when I was researching this where they swear they'll help you hire the right people. And you'll have to pay like $1,200 for some personality assessment that's supposed to help you learn who's the best hire. Well, personality is one piece. But environment dictates behavior to a large degree. So what we had learned is we were even still getting some folks that slipped through the cracks, with the drives quiz and the join our team and what have you. So eventually what we had to start doing is we said, all right, we're going to create this guide that is getting clear about what kind of work environment do these people want? Because there needs to be a fit in those kinds of expectations as well. Now stay with me. Okay. And we'll list these things off a little bit. And if you've listened before, or even if you haven't, you can go to artofcoaching.com/podcast reflections. We'll have these terms listed there. and we're going to dive deeper on this in our workshop, like I mentioned, but what we do is we tell somebody to rank in accordance with desire. So listen carefully. All right. So I'll go through what they're going to rank and then how they rank it and then how we use it and what have you. I know this is tough if you don't see it visually. So we ask them, hey, are you looking for more investigative based work or creative based work? Meaning if investigative, you're somebody that really likes gathering evidence, studying information. You really want to dive deep into learning things and you're super analytical and what have you. And investigative based work can be really good for executive assistants when you need to get more information, research assistants, of a wide variety of things. Somebody that's more creative based work, right? This is somebody that really wants to innovate, kind of metaphorically break things. They're good being put in positions where they have to experiment, and things like that. It's a little bit more open. And this is great if you're somebody that, that role means it's a little bit more entrepreneurial, or maybe there's going to be a little bit more outreach and it's going to be a little bit more front facing or even back facing. You just have to create, you have to be able to break some stuff. And then another one is, do you want to work in a complex environment? Something that's fast paced, it's flexible. It can be ambiguous, right? Think of a startup and what have you. There's going to be autonomy, but within boundaries. And then there's a conventional environment. So with that, there's a clear order. It's specific, it's predictable, it's stable, it's frequent. You know every single day what your job is going to be. There's almost no variance. Okay, then the other two categories, the final two, and then I'll repeat them and talk to you about the scoring, is we say, hey, do you want to work as part of a collective? Are you somebody where nearly every project you work on, you very much need in-depth guidance, you want a high frequency of feedback, and you really need immersive team collaboration during almost every stage of development? You have to work with a team. Or is it more you looking for, do you like independent based work? So you might be given projects. They require a lot of self-education. You will get targeted feedback at checkpoints, and there's accountability of deadlines and what have you, but there's a lot of individual effort, right? It's kind of like you're getting dropped in the middle of the ocean. We can assure you there's a shoreline, but you're going to have to find it because everybody's kind of working crazy. So, we had a situation, and actually I'll tell you about a client of ours. They had a situation where they were trying to figure out how to manage this. They loved this individual that worked for them, but it just wasn't working out. And, she was really, she was open-minded. She was really locked in a lot of ways, but she was really struggling in their position, and they had tried working with her for a number of months, and it just wasn't. And so I brought this up with them because they were doing some of our mentoring. And I said, well, have you ever had them kind of score this? And they go, well, why would I do that? They knew what the job was coming in. We told them what the environment was. It just seems redundant. I go, well, just try this. So what I coach them to do is the same thing I would coach you to do. We give them this graphic. And again, in the graphic, it says, hey, rank in accordance with desire, 1 to 6. 1 is most desirable. This is what I want in the job, in the position. This is what I need, right? As a person that's thinking about taking this role and what have you. And 6 being least desirable. Now, what's nice is you also need to take this if you're hiring, right? What you need to do is you need to score what is needed for that role in the moment. And then this is where this thing works wonders because you compare it. So I said, do this. Rank what you need in her role. Rank what you need. And I go, let's do this together. What is most desirable in the role that she's supposed to be fulfilling? And he said, well, first off, 1, we need somebody that can work in a complex environment. We're growing. This is fast paced and what have you. So that's by far number 1, most desirable and what this role needs. 2 is she needs to be independent. There is way too much hand-holding. She's incredibly intelligent, but it's almost every step of the way they have to check in, or if we don't tell them to do something, they won't get it done. And they know that this was supposed to be an independent kind of base role. So that's number 2, as opposed to collective, right? Where everything is hand guidance, super, super tight, high frequency of feedback. And then I said, okay, well, great. Is that role, do you need more creative based work then or investigative based work? And they said creative. So that's number 3. So the most important things to us in this role is somebody that can work in a complex environment, is very independent, and can find solutions creatively. I said, great. So then what are 4, 5, and 6? And, they said, well, this environment will never be conventional. So that's a definite 6. Investigative is this and collective is that. And they rounded it out. I said, great. So score that and email it to yourself so it's time-stamped. And they said, well, why would I do that? I go, because when you go over this with them, you don't want them thinking you've changed your scores. You don't want them thinking and so if you email it to yourself and it's time-stamped, especially before you even have this meeting, before you ever see their scores, it's just more honest. Oh, okay. So they had sent this to the employee as part of their performance improvement program. And wouldn't you know it, the employee came back with the exact opposite. So as where this individual, the gentleman that owned and ran the company, 1, 2, and 3 were, we need somebody in a complex environment who can work independently and does creative-based work. 1, 2, and 3 for their employee that they were struggling with was, I need a conventional environment, collective guidance, and I want to do investigative-based work. And so they got on the call. They went back and forth. We kind of helped mediate some stuff. And, he felt defeated. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, I just don't understand when we talked to them about the job, they knew this. And so while I'm really happy that we know, great, we had the talk of like, man, isn't it a relief? We've both felt really awful about this. We love you as a person. We respect you as a, worker and what have you. And it's clearly just, there's not a fit, but he was really frustrated because he just goes, I don't know why that couldn't have been done at the onset. And I go, well, now it can. So the essence of what I'm telling you, the listener, is what we make people do now is if we're hiring, we send them to a page. They fill out a form. They say, this is what we're looking for job wise. We're interested in this position, what have you. We send an email and says, great, awesome. Step 2 of this is please fill out the drives quiz. Send us your result. Please rank in accordance of your desire with the workplace environment side of things. Just score 1 through 6 and send us your result. Just send those 2 things in one email. And so what we do as a company is we know, all right, if we're hiring, and I'm making this up. Okay. So don't hear this and be like, oh my God, they're hiring for this. If we're hiring for a podcast engineer or a content manager or a sales director or what have you, if we're hiring for that, if we're hiring for those things, we'll score what they need, what we want out of that role. Okay. This dictates that we need somebody who is definitely comfortable in a complex environment. This role is going to require more investigative work. And then we actually need this person to work as part of the collective. Okay. So those are 1, 2, and 3, because maybe they're working as part of a team, but that might look very different than what we'd score for another role. Somebody that's more on the operations side is going to have a different score for what we need in that role, what we're looking for fit wise, versus somebody on the sales side or the education side or what have you. And you guys can appreciate that. All I'm saying is think of your company or your organization. There are going to be different fits and different people for different parts of what you do. You do need it. That's the thing. It's not that creative based people are better than investigative. Conventional environments are boring and complex is better. It's what does your role and what does your organization need right now? Score it. And then when you get a candidate, see how what they want and what they desire lines up with what you need. I'll say that again. They've submitted their application. They've submitted their resume. They've submitted their drives quiz. And like I said, you can lift all this. You can steal it. And then you need to see if what you need as an organization for a particular role matches up with what they need or want from a workplace. That's the thing, guys. You cannot hire on personality alone. You cannot hire just based on, your job title or your past experience, because they're going to be working in an environment every day that is going to be very unique and different. And if that environment is not a fit for what they want or the nature of the job or what you need and all that, their personality and their previous work experience doesn't really matter. It's all about those expectations. Now, other things you can do, you'll put them in situations. We'll do this. Light bulbs went off for us we just ran our communication workshop in Chicago. And a lot of times people will come just because they want to be better leaders and they want to be better at thinking on their feet. And, or maybe they're not communicating well with their significant other. And we just put people in tough situations. But it was one person came and said, I want to send potential staff to you, or I want to onboard. I want to create a deal with you guys where you're part of our onboarding process. You're part of our vetting. And so I thought about this and I'm like, why didn't we think of that? And so we had a situation where this organization had, some candidates and they were trying to figure out which one was the best fit. And so they had sent them to this thing and we had put them in situations, these role-playing improv-based situations where they had to either manage a conflict, maybe they were dealing with an unethical coworker, and they had to come up with contingencies in a certain amount of time. Well, we didn't grade them on perfection because that's relative, but it was mainly their approach. We were trying to observe how they behaved in the context of when the pressure was set up. And then we, were able to report back to that individual, hey, these were the situations. We did some video breakdowns of it. You can take a look at these. And the people that came knew what they were a part of, right? It's no different than when companies are trying to decide between a pool of candidates and they're like, hey, we want you to submit a project for us, or we want you to do this. That's very common. We don't work with any contractors. If somebody's like, oh, we do video, great. You need to send us examples of your work. We have to see that. And you've got to get away from these just resumes and references. You can put them in situations. You can have them do our drives quiz. You can have them do the work environment fit, and then some people are like, oh, that's a lot of work. Listen, Google asked people if they had to eat an elephant, how would they do it? That is what's crazy to me, is people don't think abstractly. They have these boring hiring processes. They get overwhelmed and they don't make people, yes, I'm telling you, make people jump through hoops. Because if you don't have somebody willing to do that in the interview process, you're not going to have somebody willing to do that when you're in your organization. They're going to want things easy. They're going to want to be spoon-fed. And this applies even close friends. We had somebody the other day, love them to death. And he said, if you're ever hiring for Art of Coaching, let me know. And I said, well, man, I'm really flattered because I respect this person tremendously. But are you sure you want to do that? I almost scare people out of that. I said, this is a very self-competitive company, meaning, we all have high expectations of ourselves. We're just very much like that. We're very into the craft of what we do. And there's a lot of times where things pop up in the middle of the week and we've got to adapt. I'm like, are you sure you would even really like that? I'm like, because this isn't an easy job. And he was like, no, you make a good point. And I said, so I just out of curiosity, I love you, brother, but why ask that? And I knew the answer. They were trying to escape their former job, their current job. And I can't tell you how many times we've had that too. People being like, love what you're doing. Let us know. And what it turns out is they're just not happy where they're at. So now I'm going to switch and talk to people that are looking for jobs, looking for the next step. Guys, do not apply for a job somewhere else simply because you're tired of where you're at. That is not a good enough reason. We want people to apply at Art of Coaching because they are super locked into what we do. They love what we do. And they want to go into an environment where they expect more of themselves. I mean, this is like the thing, right? Athletes get traded to teams. They generally want to be on teams where there's a challenge there, right? Where they either get to work with other highly competitive people or, the more is on their shoulders. We want people like that at Art of Coaching, true problem solvers, people that it's like, all right, it's on. I don't need Brett every day telling me exactly what I need to do. They can work within a team. They can definitely play by the rules, but you've got to be a GOAT. You've got to be a craftsman. You've got to be a craftsman. And I mean that as an inclusive term. So, I hope this gives you guys some stuff. If there's nothing else you take from it, please understand what I'm saying. You need to have tripwires when you're recruiting, when you're hiring, all these things. And, it is just, I think there's a middle ground. You don't have to be ridiculous. Like if you're not in graphic design and you're telling somebody, let's say it's an engineer or whatever, hey, submit this in InDesign along with a 4K professionally produced video, whatever. Like make your tasks actually relevant to what you're hiring for. Don't make somebody buy some like $500 program so they can put together this crazy thing. But on the other hand, applicants don't shy away from that. One of the first jobs I ever applied for, they asked me to put together a year's worth of programming. I went and binded it, got this glossy manual cover. Like, let's bring some professionalism back to this stuff. I mean, it is awful what people think. Oh, I'm just going to submit a resume. I'm going to do this. And hey, we know a guy who knows a guy. No. And it's okay, those of you that are hiring, to even be a little fickle. What I mean by that is I'll be transparent again, and you guys can roast me at the stake. I'm not going to hire somebody that hasn't been through some of our programs. I mean, why would I? How do I even know you know what the product is? If you haven't been to one of our apprenticeship programs, you haven't been through our mentoring stuff on artofcoaching.com/mentoring, you haven't gone through any of our online courses. If all you've done is kind of read my book, I'm super grateful for that. But there's more, right? There's levels to this. Don't apply for jobs at organizations that you are not 100% all in on, because they'll sniff it out. And if you don't think they will, the smart ones then will take these tripwires we've created and use them to help sniff it out. We even just saw with some contracting work we did recently. We had I can't remember, and I don't want somebody to be like, this wasn't the exact number. We had 50 people send in applications. Hey, we're interested on this and this and this. By the time they had to do the workplace or the what drives you quiz, the environment fit assessment, and then answer, to the a small little questionnaire we sent them or a project they had to finish. Guys, we were down to 4 candidates. And then out of those 4, 2 didn't even follow up on the call that was scheduled. 1 didn't even show up. And then a week later was like, hey, are we still good for this? We're like, oh, did you not get that? Oh, well, I did, but I thought you were going to send another one. So if you want to learn more about this stuff, here's the sales pitch. Go to artofcoaching.com/brand. We will talk about this and a host of other things because it is a part of strengthening your organization. You can always go faster alone, but you're going to go further together. Rah, rah. We've heard that before, right? It is true. But go further together with people that actually do their due diligence and don't need their hand held. Guys, that's it. Short, tight, to the point. Hope it helps. Please, if anything we've done has helped, leave us a review on the podcast app of your choice. I'm going to tell you to leave 5 stars because we really try super hard. I know I'm not a perfect host, what have you, but listen, we don't script this stuff. This is all raw, ad hoc, real stuff in the moment. I'm giving you stuff that, bad hiring has cost me upwards of $75,000 in my life. Probably more, because you have somebody on salary or you have somebody that you paid through contracting work that just isn't a good fit. Doesn't mean they're not a good person, just not a good fit. So this, 37, 40-minute podcast episode can potentially save you $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000 if you actually implement it and figure it out. Share it with a friend. Spread the word. Appreciate you guys. Brett Bartholomew, Art of Coaching Podcast. Talk soon.